The 2024 offseason for the Washington Commanders is right around the corner. So which players currently on the 2024 roster could Washington look to cut before the start of 2024 NFL free agency? I'm going to answer that question today. I got a list of 9 players currently on the Commanders 2024 roster on their books that they could potentially let go of here before free agency. But before I get into that, do me a favor. Don't miss anything this offseason when it comes to the Washington Commanders by clicking that subscribe button right now. Every time there's breaking news action, when they hire their new head coach, assuming they fire Ron Rivera, if they get a new quarterback in the draft this year, if they make a big spending spree there in free agency, we're going to have you covered with every single news item this offseason. Who knows? Maybe even they change their team name this year. It's going to be a very, very busy and very eventful offseason this year for the Washington Commanders. So do me a favor. If you love Washington football, click that subscribe button right now. So right now, according to Over the Cap, the current 2024 cap space for the Washington Commanders is just over $81 million, which is at the top of the NFL ranks heading into the 2024 offseason to this point. And, you could definitely choose to not cut any of the players that are currently slated to be on your roster in 2024. But if you want to create some extra room, if you want to really make a splurge in free agency, maybe go get a quarterback or something like that, trade for a high contract like maybe a Kyler Murray this offseason, and you need some more space, these are the players that I think you can consider cutting if you so choose. So let's start with Charles Leno Jr., the offensive tackle, currently the starting left tackle for the Washington Commanders. But let's face it, guys, this offensive line stinks, and Charles Leno Jr. is a big reason for that. Now, if you cut him, you save $7.5 million, but you also take on $8.25 million in dead cap next year. So it might be in the team's best interest to keep him on the team next year. The PFF grade isn't all that terrible. The way I see Charles at this point in his career is that he'd be a very, very high-end swing tackle, somebody that maybe isn't the most athletic tackle in the world, isn't really good against the high-level athletes at the edge rusher position, but he's a capable starter, somebody that can go in and you can relatively trust him on an NFL field, and he can hold his own, and that's something that Charles Leno can do, but he's not the type of guy that you really can trust in the long term to protect your future quarterback of the future here in Washington. Now, fair warning here, I know a lot of people want Charles Leno Jr.'s ass out of here. I'm not sure if that's going to be the case. Like I said, he could be a big-time asset as a swing tackle. Also, because the Commanders are likely going to be drafting a quarterback this year in the 2024 NFL draft, especially if they lose this week to the Cowboys. They're going to have a top 2 draft selection. They're going to be in position to take a QB. So if that's the case, you're not going to be able to get a premium left tackle prospect in the first round. And it certainly seems like Charles, especially given his Pro Football Focus grade this year, could be back once again as the starting left tackle here in Washington next year. However, if they do go out and draft his replacement this offseason, I could totally see them still hanging on to Leno, like I said, as a swing tackle, somebody that can play on both the right and left side, somebody that has a lot of experience, somebody that can hold his own on an NFL field if your starting tackles go down with injuries. So I actually don't think the Commanders will end up cutting Charles Leno Jr. despite the fact that many Commanders fans want to see him gone. So let me know down there in the comment section, do you think it makes sense to cut Charles Leno Jr. here in the 2024 offseason? Type C if you want to cut him, or type K if you want to keep him. This is going to be the pinned comment on today's show. So YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds. When that happens, take advantage of that time by answering today's pinned question. So now we got Shaka Toney, the edge rusher, who did not play at all this season because of a gambling violation in the NFL. If you cut him, you get to save just over $1 million, and there really wouldn't be much in terms of dead cap if you let him go. Now, obviously, the Commanders need all the help at edge as they can get, so it's definitely possible that they keep Toney on their roster. But like I said, he was suspended for the entirety of the 2023 season for gambling on team property, I believe on sports betting back in the last season, which is just the stupidest move. It's a stupid rule, but it's also a stupid decision by Toney. So it'll be interesting to see if he's still with the team come 2024. Now, coming up here, I got a tight end that I think the Commanders could be considering cutting here in the 2024 offseason. But before I reveal who that is, let's have a word from our sponsor here at Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com. prizepicks.com/CLNS and use our code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100 today. If you're looking for a way to spice up your NFL game days, especially because the Commanders stink and the playoffs are going to be coming up here soon, you can get started with Prize Picks today, which is a skill-based, real money daily fantasy sports game. So if you know ball, you can absolutely make some money with our friends at Prize Picks. You might be asking yourselves, how does this work, Jack? Well, here's how you play. You pick 2 to 6 players, and if they'll go for more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can even win up to 25 times your money on any entry. So this weekend, Commanders versus Cowboys. Coop and I, we're going to be going live for that on our watch party on Sunday. And we're going to take the less on Dak Prescott passing yards and the less on CeeDee Lamb receiving yards because F the freaking Cowboys. Check it out now at prizepicks.com/CLNS and use our code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100 today. With Prize Picks, it takes less than 60 seconds to make your picks. So get started right now. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use our code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100 today. And now we got Logan Thomas next on the list. Now, the Commanders definitely don't need to cut Logan Thomas, but if they definitely need to add a little bit of a chunk of change here to go out and get a guy like Danielle Hunter or Brian Burns or something like that, and they really want to make a splurge in free agency, you can get an additional $6.5 million if you cut Logan Thomas. It's not that much dead cap either. And, let's just face it, man. Logan Thomas is not a true number one receiving type tight end in this league. He does a lot of things okay, but he's definitely not a high-end option in this league anymore. So even though I would be fine keeping him as like a number 2 option, you bring in a true number 1 threat for whoever's quarterbacking this team and this offense next year, an $8.3 million cap hit for somebody that's just an okay player at a low-value position might not be seen as a high-value proposition for this team. So the PFF grades for Logan Thomas over the last several years, they've been okay. It's just not that bad overall. But I definitely think that Logan Thomas is probably not worth that over $8 million cap hit next year. I'm not necessarily against keeping him if the Commanders really want to do that. But $8 million for a guy like Logan Thomas is just a little bit rich for my blood. Then we got John Bates here, another tight end to the list here. And, I understand that the Commanders can't cut all of their tight ends or anything like that, but this is another opportunity where if you want to keep Logan Thomas, but you still want to replenish your tight end depth chart here during the offseason, you can save $1 million if you cut John Bates, who's just been, unremarkable, let's say, this season here for the Washington Commanders. And what I'd like to see from the Washington Commanders this offseason is that I want to see them go out and get a dynamic receiving threat at the tight end position. Last year, you had an opportunity to potentially go get Dalton Kincaid. They didn't take that opportunity last year. And I was an advocate for that because Eric Bieniemy's offense with a high-level tight end just opens up so much more opportunities. And in hindsight, that's maybe something they should have considered doing. But, at this point, we don't know what the offense is going to look like schematically for this Washington Commanders team next year. But I would absolutely love to see the Commanders go out and maybe splurge a little bit on a high-end receiving threat at this very crucial position, because if you have a good receiving tight end, you can do a lot of things on offense. Now, let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Does Washington need to get a new tight end this offseason? Type yes. Or if you're good with Logan Thomas, you think they should stick with the guys that they have, type no down there in the comments section. And then another player here that I think they just need to cut bait with is Chris Paul. The interior offensive lineman has started a little bit this year. He's a backup right now, but he has had some playing time. I just don't think he's a very good player, man. You get about a little bit less than $1 million back when you cut him, but I just don't really think he's a good NFL football player at this point. And I think it would be in the Commanders' best interest to cut bait with him and completely rebuild this roster from the ground up. So those are kind of the main cut candidates, the guys that are kind of bigger names. But there's also some other cut candidates that you could consider here for saving just under $1 million if you cut any of these guys here. Christian Holmes, Curtis Hodges, Tariq Castro-Fields, and Julian Good-Jones. All these guys are backups. All of these guys are probably not going to be starters for your team next year. So if you need a little bit of extra dough to go out and get some other free agents or maybe make a trade work, whatever the case may be, you could absolutely cut these 4 gentlemen as well. Now, if you're seeing a name on here that you're not seeing, they're probably on the 2024 free agents list. I go over every single free agent that the Commanders have going into the 2024 offseason. I let you know which players I would consider re-signing. I talk about the players that I would let walk, and then I talk about the players that maybe it's a little bit in between depending on who they bring in. I'm going to put the link to that video down in the comments and description of today's video because I think these two videos are kind of paired nicely here. So if you're looking for another video, that's a great option. All right, that's going to be it for today's show, guys. Really do appreciate all of your support. Make sure you click that subscribe button because we're going to have you covered with Commanders offseason coverage all throughout this offseason. When they have the head coaching search, when they hire their new head coach, right? If they get a new quarterback, free agency is going to be huge for them this year as well. And we're going to be right here covering it all for you guys right here on YouTube, 100% free. So do me a favor, click that subscribe button right now and join the Commanders Report family.